How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another No Rest for the Wicked video, and today I want to talk to you guys quickly about the weapon balance in the game currently. I want to do these conversational videos every once in a while just so that the devs can get a little bit of feedback and get a little bit of feedback on my thoughts when it comes to just different parts or different aspects of the game as the game progresses and more is added to the game. Now recently I have been playing a lot of different builds, in a lot of cases just to see what works, what doesn't work, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and I've come to the conclusion that a handful of things is really exaggerating the poor or not so good weapon balance that I feel like exists in No Rest for the Wicked, and I kind of want to go over why I think that is. So the first thing that we definitely need to talk about very early on is runes. I think the biggest problem that me and a lot of players have right now is, though there are a lot of runes available in the game, a lot of them are really hard to get. And I say that they're hard to get not in a way that I have to go out and actually do something and get them, not being a lazy player or anything like that, but they're just impossible to farm. For example, over the last 2 or 3 days, I probably ran the Crucible maybe 100+ times at this point, and the vast majority, and I mean like 85+% of them, are runes that I find in the shop. Now obviously this is a massive problem because first off, we should be able to find runes to test builds out and explore what the game has to offer. That's a pretty obvious big problem, that we can't actually test a lot of the builds out. Again, I only have 2 build videos on my channel, and if you are familiar with my brand, one of the biggest things I do is put a lot of build videos out because I really love testing things. If you actually look at my character list, I have 8 characters, 20+ that's actively ready to go out and like make content for. But because I can't find any of the runes, I just simply can't even make builds, which is a little bit annoying for me as a creator, and probably a little bit annoying for you guys as consumers who want to maybe try out a few builds. The other reason why this is terrible is just it doesn't feel rewarding. I know the Crucible in its current state isn't meant to be the true end game of No Rest for the Wicked, but at the very least, I feel like whenever I'm opening the chest, that we get the possibility of really good runes. The amount of times I've opened that chest and gotten stuff that I could have gotten from the normal shop for like 2 silver has been significantly more than I think it should have been. And even more so, just in general, the gear within it is just not good at all. More times than not, it's just random common gear, which I can find just farming anywhere. And yeah, of course it comes with some legendaries, most which are broken currently in the game. But let's be real here, most of the legendaries, even if they function properly, they're not really going to be build defining in my opinion, besides like 2 or 3 of them. So starting off, I think we really need to take a look at the Crucible in terms of the rewards that's coming out of it, and possibly adding more runes to the shop, or maybe even on rotation within the shop that we see in the town with Ginrich or whatever that person name is. It would be really nice to have runes in there so we can have the possibility of actually trying out builds. Now the next thing I wanted to quickly talk about was the weapon balance. The balance between magic, range, faster attacking melee weapons, and the slow attacking melee weapons. Starting off mainly with the slow attacking melee weapons, I think they're in a very horrible spot for a couple of reasons. First, it boils down to a lot of the runes. The runes that are good are far few in between, meaning that a lot of the runes that you see are just not very good for them. For example, a lot of them have these really long, slow wind-up attacks that comparatively to their other counterparts that are significantly faster or safer, do way less damage. Their stun is pretty high, I guess, but again, in terms of like total weapon speed, you don't actually get to attack as fast, and in turn, things like daggers stagger way faster. So the playstyle comes off as very sluggish and very slow, and in a lot of cases not worth picking up in my opinion, versus just getting a much faster weapon that can deliver damage much more quickly. In the same vein, because the windup is so slow, in a lot of cases I just get knocked out of it. I feel like if you're not going super heavy in armor and poise, you're not able to get a lot of your attacks off, and even with full armor, some of the most common mobs can just straight up knock you out of your abilities. Unless I'm just spamming the hold attack, it just feels like everything just pushes me all over the place, and it's just really hard to get these heavy weapon attacks off. I'm sure a lot of this is actually exaggerated by the fact that you can actually use rings that give you increased attack speed. I don't actually think that's a solution, to just be forced into using rings that gives you attack speed. I think that's just bad. I think that's just a band-aid solution, hypothetically, if they did function. But right now, it feels like the core design of the way two-hand weapons work don't feel exactly as good as they may have supposed to be. So for right now, it feels like the weapons in general, when it comes to at least the two-handers or the slower swinging sluggish weapons, they just don't compare and they feel really bad to play in my opinion. And that's actually a little disappointing because I am a fan of just those bulky, hard-hitting weapons, and if you're not just straight up tossing magic on them, they just, in my opinion, just don't compare in any way, shape, or form. I think the biggest thing that makes magic so much stronger than melee, like in every game, is that magic is safe. It's always safe, it's far away, and even more so in No Rest for the Wicked, a lot of the cast animations aren't actually that terrible. Once again, I'm always going to go back to the slow wind up that a lot of the melee based abilities have. They're just so sluggish and slow that they take so long to get off. It's like actually frustratingly slow. This actually extends to a lot of the arrow attacks, but again, you're like standing back shooting them, so it doesn't feel so bad. And I know some people are gonna say, well, the game is supposed to be like methodical attacking, and I get that, but I think there's a fundamental difference between attacks feeling very frustratingly slow and being methodical. At some point, it feels like whenever I'm using two-handed weapons, it's like the pacing is so much slower than if I just go with my cone shot build, stand at a distance and just be rewarded significantly more for doing significantly less. And I think that's a fundamental problem melee builds tend to have in not just No Rest for the Wicked, just every ARPG I've ever played. It's just very apparent in No Rest for the Wicked, seeing that attacks generally are much slower, and those super long windups like super exaggerate that. I think the reason why a lot of players actually value magic so much more is because it's just so much easier to play. And I don't think that's like a bad thing. I think it's because it like functionally feels way better than like melee, for example, or at least two-handed melee. The sad part about it all is regardless of whatever weapon you're playing, more times than not you're probably going to have pretty heavy armor anyway, since it's not that heavy of an investment to get equipment load to a good point. Like 25 points and a few pieces of heavy armor with equipment load reduction is actually more than enough you need to stay fairly nimble while still having pretty decent protection even as a mage. Obviously this, in my opinion, is also a massive problem as well, as armor is way too easy to get on pretty much every build. I'm not saying necessarily make equipment load like less good. I'm just saying it just feels really bad when you have this melee character that's consistently in danger. If he's using specific types of weapons, which is a good portion of them, he has really long windups that can easily be interrupted comparatively to a mage that can still get very similar protection when it comes to armor, much faster cast animations, safer playstyle overall, and just generally get so much more out of their speed because of just the core design of magic versus melee. I feel like a lot of this can actually be alleviated if you gave like the more melee eccentric skills a little bit more poise or some form of like stagger resistance, so that whenever they inevitably get hit because their windups are so slow, they're more likely to actually get the attack off. I also like to point out the consistent healing nerfs actually does exaggerate this problem a little bit too. And even more so, a lot of the nerfs really affect the heavier, slower melee and melee in general significantly more than affect a lot of the range builds. You really have to think about it this way. A lot of times the mage based builds as well as the range based builds aren't necessarily needing like the healing effect stuff. They're not needing really the health on hit kind of stuff. The ones that really need it are the melee classes because they are actively like in danger. And I get the feeling that the reason why these nerfs are happening is because of the more faster melee attacking skills. They get a lot of benefit from it. But the problem is whenever you do that, it actually hurts those much slower sluggish attacking builds to a point where it actually feels unplayable. And the other thing to add to this is it takes melee a lot more to be functional comparatively than someone that is range. Realistically, if I was to run my bow build, all I need to do is just not even wear armor. I can just use a white bow and absolutely trek everything from a distance because honestly, I'm never in danger to actually take damage. When I'm doing these slow wind up attacks with these melee based like builds, I'm really gonna need those poises. I need the resistances. I need to heal because I'm gonna probably take a hit to get the wind up off. I'm gonna need the healing effectiveness to kind of maybe help. I'm gonna need the anti-stagger so I can get the attack off. I'm gonna need quite a bit more in terms of like my overall armor investment to really get the most benefit out of it. And like these nerfs that are consistently happening versus just like fixing the problems actually really hurt one more than the other. Again, they feel like band-aid solutions that kind of need to be looked at a little bit better when you're trying to balance these 4 different playstyles, which is magic, range, non-magic, melee, which is really fast, and the slower, more melee attacks, because those things all are affected very vastly different when you do like a more overall nerf on everything. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. Hopefully we can get a conversation started. Obviously I post this in all the locations where the devs could possibly see it. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one.